The soft hum of Ethelberg orbital habitat was Ilara's lullaby. It was a sound like 1,000 distant whispers, a symphony of air recyclers, gravity spin, and the gentle sigh of life support systems breathing across the vast curving expanse of her home. Outside her panoramic window, a million diamonds glittered against velvet black, the distant, indifferent stars, and closer, the breathtaking sapphire swirl of Earth, her birthplace, a shimmering marble in the cosmic game. Ilara, all 8 years of her, lay tucked into her anti-grav cot, a cocoon of soft light and recycled air. Her room, like all residential units on Athelberg, was a marvel of ergonomic design and adaptive technology. Holographic projections danced on the walls, currently displaying a tranquil forest biome from Sector Gamma, complete with rustling leaves and the chirping of bioengineered nightingales. Her companion AI, a soothing feminine voice she called Lyra, murmured a story about a little starship that learned to sing. And so, the Stardust Serenade hummed its happy tune across the nebulae, bringing joy to every comet it met, Lyra concluded, her voice tapering off into a gentle silence. Ilara sighed contentedly, pulling her grav blanket tighter. Thank you, Lyra. That was lovely. You are most welcome, Ilara. Would you like another story or perhaps a guided meditation to the lunacy of tranquility? Ilara giggled. No, Lyra, I think I just want to watch the stars tonight. Lyra's avatar, a shimmering motes of light butterfly, fluttered to the corner of the window. A wise choice, Ilara. The cosmos holds infinite wonders. Ilara watched the silent ballet of light years unfolding. Her parents, Dr. Aris Thorne and Dr. Lena Thorne, were usually still in their labs at this hour. Her father, a chronospatial architect, spent his days designing structures that could interact with the very fabric of time. Not for travel, he always stressed, but for stability, for energy, for understanding the echoes of moments. Her mother, an astrobotanist, cultivated resilient life forms in the station's biodomes, coaxing vibrant ecosystems from the barrenness of space. Their work was vital, demanding, and often kept them away. Ilara understood, mostly. But sometimes, she missed their laughter, their stories that weren't pre-programmed by Lyra. A soft chime echoed through her room. The door slid open silently, and her mother appeared, her face tired but alight with a gentle smile. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose bun, a few stray strands escaping, dusted with what Ilara knew was nutrient substrate from the biolabs. Still awake, little stargazer? Lena asked, her voice a warm balm. She knelt beside the cot, pressing a soft kiss to Ilara's forehead. Mama, you're home early. Ilara sat up, her eyes wide. Just for a moment. We had a minor breakthrough with the ocelari vines. They're adapting even faster than expected to the simulated Martian regolith. Your father and I just wanted to check on you before heading back for a late-night observation cycle. Ilara's smile wavered slightly. Oh, okay. Lena's thumb stroked Ilara's cheek. I know, sweetling. It's a busy week. But soon we'll have a whole cycle of downtime. We can visit the Zero-G Gardens, or maybe even take a shuttle to the observation deck in Sector Zeta. They have a new nebula projection that's simply breathtaking. That sounds nice, Ilara said, trying to sound enthusiastic. She loved her parents fiercely, and knew their work was for the good of all Athelberg. But sometimes her small world felt very quiet. It will be, Lena promised, rising. No, get some sleep, dream of nebulae and singing starships. She kissed Ilara again, then walked to the door. Aris is just finishing up some data logs. He'll be in to say goodnight. Ilara lay back, watching the stars again. A few minutes later, her father's taller, broader figure filled the doorway. Dr. Aris Thorne had the kindest eyes, often crinkled at the corners from smiling, and an unruly mop of brown hair that always seemed to defy gravity. My little chronospatial explorer, he murmured, his voice a low rumble. He sat on the edge of her cot, the soft mattress dipping slightly under his weight. Still adventuring across the cosmos? Just watching, Papa, Ilara replied, leaning into his side. His lab coat smelled faintly of ozone, and something clean, like fresh rain. Watching is the first step to understanding, my dear, he said, ruffling her hair. The universe holds its secrets close, but it rewards the patient observer. He paused, his gaze drifting to the window. You know, when I was a boy, I used to imagine what it would be like to see not just gay space, but time, to see the echoes of what was and the shimmering possibilities of what might be. Elara looked up at him. Like a time machine. He chuckled, a warm sound. Not exactly, sweetling. Time machines are tricky business, too many paradoxes, but imagine a way to observe time, to see the layers of moments that have passed over a single spot, like turning the pages of a very old, very thick book, to see the station when it was just girders and dreams, or the moment the first Emsalarai vine unfurled its leaves in your mother's lap. Elara's eyes widened. Could you really do that? Aris smiled wistfully. We're still working on it. The physics are complex. But we have a few experimental devices. Very delicate. Very secret. He winked. It's called chronospatial weaving. We try to weave the threads of causality together, to create windows, not pathways. He stood up, stretching. Well, this chronospatial architect needs to get back to his chronospatial weaving. Big day tomorrow, little one. Project De Tempus is nearing its next phase. He kissed her temple. Sleep well, Elara. Dream of adventures. You too, Papa, she whispered as he left, the door sliding shut with a soft click. Elara lay awake for a long time, the idea of weaving time spinning through her mind. Windows into the past. Glimpses of moments. It sounded like magic. The next morning, Elara woke to the smell of nutrient paste and her mother's cheerful humming. Her parents were still home. A rare treat. Good morning, sleepyhead. Lena called from the small kitchen alcove. Your father's just finishing up his breakfast. Special treat today, synthesized blueberries. Elara scrambled out of bed, pulling on her soft jumpsuit. She hurried into the main living area, a spacious minimalist room with a holographic display dominating one wall, currently showing a serene view of the station's central arboretum. Aris was indeed at the breakfast bar, scrolling through a datapad, a bowl of purple berries beside him. Morning, Papa. Good morning, my little chrononaut, he said, looking up, a genuine smile replacing the focused frown on his face. Sleep well. Yes, Mama said you're both home this morning. Just for a short while, Lena said, placing a bowl of berries and a nutrient bar in front of Elara. We have an important meeting with the Athelberg Council about the Tempus project. It's a very sensitive proposal. Elara nodded, shoveling berries into her mouth. She knew, sensitive meant important, and important meant her parents would be extra busy. After a quick breakfast, her parents prepared to leave. Aris paused by a door Elara rarely saw opened, his private study. It was usually locked with a biometric scanner, filled with his strange, wonderful devices and diagrams. No, Elara, he said, turning to her. We'll be gone for most of the day. Lyra'll be on standby. Do your school modules, and maybe spend some time in the biodomes. But whatever you do, do not go into my study, all right? He gave her a serious look. I'm working with some very delicate temporal harmonics. One wrong adjustment and, well, it could cause some interesting ripples. Elara's curiosity, already piqued by his talk of weaving time, flared. I won't, Papa, I promise. Good girl, he said, giving her a quick hug. We'll be back before evening cycle, hopefully with good news. With a final wave, her parents were gone, the door sliding shut, and the soft click of the lock engaging. Elara watched their departure on the small internal sensor screen, feeling the familiar pang of quiet. She spent the morning dutifully completing her school modules, guided by Lyra. She learned about stellar cartography, practiced her universal translation, and solved complex mathematical puzzles that involved calculating orbital trajectories. But all the while, her mind kept drifting back to her father's study. Temporal harmonics. Interesting ripples. Nels. She tried to distract herself. She played a holographic game where she had to pilot a tiny scout ship through an asteroid field. She even ventured into the communal recreation lounge, but it was mostly empty at this time of day. By mid-afternoon, a restless energy buzzed under her skin. She returned to her apartment, the silence amplifying the thrumming curiosity within her. She walked past her father's study door. It was solid, featureless, betraying no hint of the wonders it might hold. "Lyra," Elara said, trying to sound nonchalant. "What exactly does Papa do in his study?" "Dr. Aris Thorne conducts research and development for the Chronospatial Dynamics Division," Lyra replied instantly. "His current project, iCampus, involves the stabilization of localized temporal fields for enhanced energy generation and structural integrity within the habitat." "Is it dangerous?" "All high-level chronospatial research carries inherent risks, Elara, but Dr. Thorne is highly skilled and adheres to all safety protocols." Elara nodded slowly. "Risks, Doc." That made it even more intriguing. She walked past the door again. Then she stopped. Something was different. The tiny indicator light on the biometric scanner, usually a steady green when locked, was a faint, almost imperceptible pulse of amber. Her heart gave a little thump. Had her father forgotten to lock it properly? Or had the temporal harmonics caused a glitch? Slowly, cautiously, Elara reached out a hand. Her small fingers brushed the cool surface of the door. The amber flicker intensified slightly. She pressed her palm against it. Nothing. Then, to her astonishment, the door slid open with a soft, almost inaudible hiss. Elara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She stared into the dimness of the study. It was a cavern of organized chaos, unlike the sleek minimalism of the rest of their apartment. Shelves lined with ancient-looking data crystals and holographic projectors filled one wall. Intricate three-dimensional schematics glowed in the air, depicting swirling energy patterns and impossibly complex geometric forms. A large, curved desk dominated the center, covered in instruments Elara didn't recognize, strange metallic spheres, glowing wires, and an array of touch-sensitive panels. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Do not go into my study." But the door was open. And that flickering light, it felt like an invitation. A secret, just for her. She took a hesitant step inside. The air in the study felt different, subtly charged, almost buzzing. It wasn't unpleasant, just alive. The holographic schematics hummed with a low, resonant frequency. Elara walked deeper into the room, her eyes wide with wonder. She recognized some of the smaller tools, a sonic screwdriver her father used to tighten recalcitrant panels, a specialized datapad. But her gaze was drawn to a pedestal in the corner, shrouded in a shimmering, almost invisible field. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Resting on the pedestal was a sphere, about the size of her head, but it wasn't solid. It was composed of countless interwoven crystalline filaments, each thread glowing with an inner light that pulsed in a gentle rhythm. The filaments weren't static, they seemed to be in constant slow motion, shifting and reweaving themselves, creating a miniature, swirling nebula of soft, multicolored light within the sphere. It hummed with a sound so low, it was felt more than heard, a deep vibration that resonated in her chest. This had to be it. This had to be one of the experimental devices her father had spoken of. The chronospatial weaver. Elara approached it, mesmerized. The shimmering field around it parted as she drew near, as if sensing her presence. She reached out a hand, her fingers trembling slightly. The sphere felt cool and smooth, but also somehow alive, pulsing faintly beneath her touch. A small, intricate symbol glowed on the pedestal beneath the sphere, a spiral within a circle, interlocking. Elara touched it, tracing the lines with her fingertip. The moment her finger connected with the symbol, the sphere flared with an intense, soft light. The interwoven filaments began to spin faster, creating a mesmerizing vortex of color. The hum deepened, vibrating through the entire study, through Elara's very bones. Then, the light expanded. It didn't just grow brighter, it projected outward from the sphere, forming a vast, shimmering curtain of light that filled the entire far wall of the study. It was like looking through a window made of liquid starlight, a window that seemed to ripple and shift. Elara gasped, stepping back. The wall was gone, replaced by a translucent, swirling vista. And within that vista, she saw her own study. But it was different. The walls were the same, the furniture was the same, but the light was softer, warmer, as if bathed in an amber sunset. And there, at the central desk, sat her parents. They looked younger. Her father's hair was a little less grey, her mother's smile a little wider, less tired. They were laughing, their faces alight with a carefree joy Elara rarely saw now. Her father was holding a small, intricately carved wooden bird, turning it over in his hands, while her mother leaned in, whispering something that made him throw his head back in a hearty laugh. It was a perfect, captured moment, vibrant and alive, yet shimmering with the unreality of a dream. Elara watched, transfixed. A wave of bittersweet emotion washed over her. She felt the warmth of their love, their happiness, radiating from the temporal echo. But she also felt a pang of longing. That was a time before Project A Campus, before the urgent demands of Athelberg's future consumed them. Suddenly her father in the temporal projection looked up, his gaze seeming to pierce through the shimmering curtain, directly at her. A playful, knowing grin spread across his younger face. He winked. Elara gasped again, her heart leaping. He had seen her. But how? It was impossible. This was a ghastly moment. The projection wavered, then began to recede, shrinking back into the sphere. The colors dimmed, the hum softened, and the shimmering curtain collapsed back into the interwoven filaments of the Chrono weaver. The study wall reappeared, solid and real. Elara stood there, trembling slightly, her mind reeling. She had seen them. Really seen them. And her father? He had winked. Was it just a coincidence? A trick of the light? Or was there something more to this Chrono weaver than just simple observation? Her father's voice from yesterday echoed in her mind. Wei tried to weave the threads of causality together to create windows, not pathways, and his words from this morning. She looked at the Chrono weaver, now glowing with a gentle, steady light, the symbol on its pedestal still faintly illuminated. It felt less like a dangerous forbidden device now, and more like a secret friend. A friend that had just shown her a precious hidden memory. A new idea sparked in her mind, a daring, thrilling thought. If it could show her one moment, could it show her others? Could it show her anything? Cautiously, Elara approached the weaver again. This time she didn't just touch the symbol. She placed both hands gently on the sphere itself. It vibrated softly under her palms, a quiet purr. She closed her eyes, focusing. She pictured the central biodome, Sector Gamma, where her mother worked. She wanted to see it as it was being built, before the lush vegetation, before the delicate ecosystems. She wanted to see the bare bones of Athelberg. She opened her eyes. The sphere pulsed, and the walls shimmered again, but this time the projection was different. It wasn't the study. It was a vast cavernous space, filled with scaffolding and the skeletal framework of what would become a magnificent glass dome. Tiny construction drones zipped through the air, welding beams and securing panels. Engineers in luminous suits moved purposefully across temporary walkways. The air was filled with the clang of metal, the hiss of plasma torches, and the murmur of distant voices. It was alive with the raw energy of creation. Elara watched, captivated, seeing her home being born. She recognized the distinctive curve of the outer hull, the interlocking patterns of the life support conduits. It was breathtaking. Then, as her gaze drifted across the vast construction site, something caught her eye. At the very edge of the projection, near a section of unfinished wall, a faint shimmering outline appeared. It wasn't a drone, or an engineer, or a piece of machinery. It was a figure. It was translucent, like a ghost, flickering in and out of existence. It was tall and slender, draped in what looked like a long flowing cloak that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its features were indistinct, blurred by the temporal distortion, but Elara felt a strange sense of presence. It stood utterly still, observing the construction with an unnerving intensity, its head tilted slightly, as if listening to a sound no one else could hear. The figure didn't belong. It wasn't part of the construction crew. It wasn't a shadow or a reflection. It was an anomaly, a temporal ghost shimmering at the edges of Athelberg's past. Elara's breath hitched. She felt a prickle of unease, a cold sensation coiling in her stomach. This wasn't a memory of her parents, a comforting echo. This was something else. Something mysterious. As quickly as it had appeared, the figure wavered, fading into the background hum of the construction site. The entire projection began to distort, the image stretching and pulling like taffy before snapping back into the Chrono Weaver. The study wall reappeared, solid and inert. Elara stood frozen, staring at the now softly glowing sphere. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Who was that? What was it doing there? And why had the Chrono Weaver shown it to her? The wonder she had felt moments ago was now mixed with a thrilling, terrifying curiosity. Her father had spoken of interesting ripples. Was this one of them? A ripple that had momentarily brought a stranger from another time, or perhaps another dimension, into view. The Chrono Weaver pulsed gently, its crystalline filaments swirling, as if inviting her to peer through its temporal window once more. Elara looked at the door, still ajar, then back at the sphere. Her father would be home soon. She knew she shouldn't be here. She knew this was dangerous. But the image of the cloaked figure, standing silently amidst the birth of Athelberg, burned in her mind. It was a secret, a mystery. And Elara, the little chrononaut, felt an irresistible urge to uncover it. She took another step towards the Chrono Weaver, her small hand reaching out once more. The hum in the room seemed to rise in anticipation. She had to know. She had to know. Her fingers, small and trembling, finally brushed the cool, smooth surface of the Chrono Weaver. It felt like polished moonlight, impossibly sleek and alive. As her skin made contact, a soft, resonant hum vibrated through her fingertips, up her arm, and settled deep in her chest. The sphere pulsed once gently, with an inner light that shifted from a deep sapphire to a shimmering emerald. It wasn't the violent flash of the Athelberg projection she'd seen earlier, but a quiet invitation. Elara gasped, not in fear, but in sheer awe. The air around her seemed to thicken, tasting faintly of ozone and ancient dust. The faint hum in the room intensified, no longer a background drone, but a chorus of whispered energies. She pressed her palm flat against the sphere, feeling its subtle warmth grow beneath her touch. A kaleidoscope of images flickered across its surface, momentary glimpses of bustling alien markets, star-dusted nebulae, cities woven from light, and towering structures that defied gravity. They came and went too quickly to decipher, like a dream half remembered. This wasn't just a viewing device, she realized. It was a doorway. Her father had always spoken of the Chrono Weaver, with a reverence that bordered on fear, calling it a temporal conduit, a nexus of all moments. He'd warned her never to touch it, never to even approach it without his supervision. He worked with time, she knew, mending paradoxes and observing the delicate flow of history, but he'd never allowed her to truly understand the sheer power contained within this room. But now, with her hand on the sphere, the mystery wasn't just a distant curiosity. It was a tangible force pulling at her. She focused her intent, picturing the cloaked figure in Athelberg. The sphere seemed to respond, its inner light settling on a soft golden hue. The flickering images slowed, then coalesced into a single cohesive scene that bloomed not beyond the sphere, but around in it. The room dissolved, replaced by the breathtaking vista of Ethelberg's Genesis. It wasn't just a flat projection anymore, it was an immersive, three-dimensional spectacle that filled her father's workshop. She stood on a shimmering, translucent platform, high above the nascent city. Below, colossal crystalline structures, like giant frozen waterfalls, pulsed with their own internal light as they slowly rose from the cloud sea. Automated construction drones, luminous as fireflies, zipped through the air, weaving intricate energy conduits between the emerging towers. The sky above was a canvas of swirling aurora, reflecting the city's birth in a celestial dance. And there, amidst the grandeur, exactly as she'd seen before, stood the cloaked figure. They were slightly closer now, positioned on a scaffolding of pure light that extended from one of the central spires. The cloak was woven from what looked like midnight itself, absorbing all light, yet its edges seemed to shimmer with an undefined energy. It concealed every inch of their form, leaving only the faintest impression of a tall, slender silhouette. Elara took a cautious step forward on the holographic platform. Her feet felt solid, even though she knew logically she was still in her father's workshop. The air here was cool and crisp, carrying the faint metallic scent of new construction and the distant, sonorous hum of the city's core. She could hear the soft whirring of the drones, the gentle creak of expanding crystal. It was real. Or, at least, it felt real. The cloaked figure remained utterly still, a silent sentinel in the heart of the temporal storm. But then, as Elara watched, something new happened. The figure raised a hand, slowly, deliberately. There was no visible device, no dramatic gesture. Yet, as their hand lifted, a ripple seemed to pass through the very fabric of the emerging city. One of the massive crystal spires, which had been rising steadily, paused. It didn't stop completely, but its upward momentum slowed, almost imperceptibly, before resuming its climb at a fractionally different angle. Then the figure lowered their hand, and the ripple subsided. It was such a subtle alteration, so slight, that anyone else would have missed it. But Elara, with the sharp eyes of a child, saw it. It was like a single stitch being added to an impossibly vast tapestry, changing the pattern just enough to shift the whole design. The figure turned their head then, slowly, as if sensing her presence, even across the chasm of time and space. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't see a face, only the deep, bottomless hood. But she felt a gaze, ancient and knowing, pierce through the temporal veil and settle on her. A wave of profound stillness washed over her, a sense of being utterly seen. A quiet, melodic chime echoed through the holographic space. It wasn't a sound from Ethelberg, it was the chime of her father's front door. He was home. Panic flared, sharp and cold, cutting through the wonder. She had to get back now. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She looked frantically around the shimmering projection. Where was the Chrono Weaver? How did she turn this off? She squeezed her eyes shut, picturing her father's workshop, the familiar metallic sheen of the tools, the scent of his databanks. When she opened them, the magnificent vista of Ethelberg wavered, shimmering like heat haze on a distant road. The platform beneath her feet felt less solid. She focused, willing herself back. The projection flickered, then began to recede, drawing back into the sphere. The magnificent city collapsed into itself, the aurora-lit sky shrinking until it was just a point of light on the Chrono Weaver's surface. The familiar walls of her father's workshop slowly reasserted themselves. She stumbled back, away from the sphere, her legs feeling like jelly. The Chrono Weaver pulsed one last time, a gentle, almost regretful beat, before its inner light faded to a soft, barely visible glow. The room's hum returned to its usual low drone. It looked exactly as it had before, an innocuous polished sphere on its pedestal. But Elara was not the same. Her heart was still racing, her mind a whirlwind of crystalline towers, silent drones, and that unnerving, knowing gaze. The cloaked figure hadn't just been observing, they had been exacting. Subtly, profoundly, they had influenced the very birth of Ethelberg. What did that mean? And what had they sensed from her? Another chime from the front door. This time, it was followed by the soft clink of her father's keys. She had mere seconds. Elara scrambled, her small hands fumbling with the heavy workshop door. She managed to pull it mostly shut, leaving just a sliver of an opening, before darting across the hallway and into her own bedroom. She threw herself onto her bed, pulling the covers up to her chin, trying to make her breathing even. "Elara, I'm home, sweetheart," her father's voice called, warm and tired, from the living area. "Hi, Papa," she managed, her voice a little too high-pitched. She heard him moving about, putting his things away. A moment later, his footsteps approached her room. The door opened, letting in the gentle light from the hallway. Dr. Aris Thorne stood in the doorway, a tall, kind man with a perpetually slightly rumpled lab coat, and eyes that held the deep wisdom of someone who peered into the past and future every day. He smiled, a soft, weary curve of his lip. "Still awake, my little chrononaut?" He always called her that, a playful nod to her boundless curiosity, though he never knew how literal that nickname had become. "Just reading," she mumbled, clutching her datapad, which was actually off. He chuckled. "You and your stories. I brought us some Nutri-Paste, and I think I saw a fresh batch of comet dust cookies in the dispenser. Elara's stomach, despite the lingering adrenaline, gave a hopeful rumble. Cookies? Only if you promise to finish your studies tomorrow, he said, ruffling her hair. He didn't notice the lingering scent of ozone, or the subtle tremor in her hands. Been a long day. A temporal anomaly in the late 23rd century, minor but persistent, had to recalibrate the chronal flow stabilizers. He sighed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. The chrono weaver was humming a bit louder tonight than usual, I noticed. Must be all the energetic recalibrations. Elara's heart nearly stopped. He'd noticed. But he thought it was with Kizgwa. A wave of relief, quickly followed by guilt, washed over her. Oh, she said, trying to sound casual. Yeah, I guess so. He gave her another soft smile. All right. Get some rest. We'll have those cookies after your bath. He closed the door gently, leaving her in the dim light of her room. Elara lay there, staring at the ceiling, the image of Ethelberg's birth still vivid in her mind. The cloaked figure. Their subtle, almost imperceptible act of manipulation. The way they had seemed to look directly at her. And a chrono weaver. It had responded to her. It had taken her, or at least her senses, to another time. It had been more than a projection. It had been an immersion. The feeling of the cool air, the scent of new crystal, the solidity of the platform beneath her feet, those were not mere visual tricks. Her father called himself a chrononaut, but he only observed the time streams, patching up errant paradoxes. Elara had just taken her first step into interacting with them. The difference felt vast, terrifying, and exhilarating. She knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that she had to go back. Not just to observe, but to understand. To understand the cloaked figure, their purpose, and their connection to the genesis of Ethelberg. The city's birth was a cornerstone of their civilization's history, a marvel of engineering and a beacon of hope, founded on principles of peace and interconnectedness. To think it might have been subtly shaped, even manipulated, by a hidden hand, it changed everything. The next few days were a blur of nervous energy for Elara. She ate her NutriPaste, did her lessons, and tried to act perfectly normal, but her mind was constantly replaying the scene in Ethelberg. She found herself sketching the crystalline spires, trying to capture the feeling of the cloud sea, and most of all, the enigmatic silhouette of the cloaked figure. She even tried to subtly ask her father about Ethelberg's early days, feigning interest for a school project. Ethelberg, a truly magnificent undertaking. Her father mused one evening, peering at a holographic star map taught her. Built on the cloud sea of Xylos, a testament to interspecies cooperation, its founders, the Council of Architects, were visionaries. They sought to create a city that would represent the pinnacle of harmonious existence. He gestured to the map, where a shimmering, multi-layered city sparkled amidst ethereal clouds. The historical records are quite clear on its development, a marvel of self-assembly, guided by advanced AI, and the collective will of its inhabitants. Elara listened intently. Was there anyone unusual involved? She ventured, trying to keep her voice even. Like an unknown architect? Or a secret guardian? Her father chuckled. In every grand endeavor, there are always those who prefer to work in the shadows, I suppose. But no, the official records credit the council entirely. Why do you ask, sweetie? Are you writing a historical fiction? Maybe, Elara mumbled, feeling a pang of disappointment. Her father, the ultimate keeper of time, had no record of the cloaked figure. This meant their actions were either incredibly well hidden, or they existed outside the official chronal records. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. That night, after her father had settled into his own work in the Chrono Weaver chamber, the door securely locked, of course, Elara couldn't sleep. The mystery gnawed at her. The cloaked figure's subtle manipulation of Ethelberg's spire. The feeling of being watched, acknowledged. She felt an urgent need to uncover more. The opportunity came a few nights later. Her father had been called away on an emergency chronal stabilization mission to a distant galactic quadrant. He would be gone for at least a standard week. He'd left her with her favorite stories, a fully stocked food dispenser, and strict instructions not to venture into his workshop. The moment the airlock hissed shut behind his starship, Elara felt a surge of adrenaline. This was her chance. She waited until the ambient light from the city outside had dimmed to a soft twilight glow. The apartment was silent, save for the gentle hum of the life support systems. Taking a deep breath, Elara made her way to the workshop door. This time, she knew exactly what she was doing. She approached the Chrono Weaver with a newfound confidence, though her heart still thrummed a nervous rhythm. She placed both hands on its surface. The sphere responded instantly, its inner light flaring to that familiar sapphire to emerald pulse. The ozone-laced air seemed to thicken around her. "Ethelberg," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The cloaked figure, show me more." The images began to coalesce once more, but this time, they weren't just the birth of the city. The sphere seemed to be searching, sifting through temporal currents, responding to the nuance in her request. It settled on a scene that was both familiar and startlingly different. She was back in Ethelberg, but the city was further along in its development. The crystalline spires were now fully formed, reaching majestically into the cloud sea. Sky bridges of shimmering light connected the towers, and small, elegant star skimmers zipped along established routes. It was a bustling, vibrant metropolis, a testament to the vision her father had described. And there, observing from a high secluded balcony overlooking the central plaza, was the cloaked figure. This time, they weren't alone. They were interacting with someone. The person was a woman, regal and serene, dressed in robes of flowing silver. Her hair was spun like starlight, and her eyes held an ancient wisdom. Elara recognized her instantly from her history lessons. Lyra, the first architect, one of the principal founders of Ethelberg. The scene was silent, but Elara could feel the weight of their conversation. Lyra was gesturing towards the city below, her expression earnest. The cloaked figure merely listened, their head tilted slightly, a posture of patient attention. Then Lyra reached out and placed a hand gently on the figure's cloaked arm. The gesture was one of deep trust, even affection. Suddenly, the figure moved. They reached into the folds of their cloak, and produced something small and iridescent. It glowed with a soft inner light, like a captive nebula. It seemed to be a shard of crystal, intricately faceted, pulsing with the same sapphire to emerald light she'd seen inside the Chrono Weaver itself. The figure pressed it into Lyra's hand. As Lyra took the crystal, her eyes widened. A look of profound understanding, almost revelation, dawned on her face. She looked from the crystal to the cloaked figure, a silent question passing between them. The figure gave a subtle nod. Then, the scene fractured. The Chrono Weaver pulsed violently, and the immersive projection around Elara shimmered, distorting like water. The image of Lyra and the cloaked figure stretched and warped, their forms elongating, their colors bleeding into each other. A strange resonant whine filled the room, a sound that seemed to scrape against the very edge of her hearing. Elara felt a powerful, disorienting lurch. The floor beneath her feet vanished. She was falling, or perhaps being pulled, through a maelstrom of light and sound. Time itself seemed to unravel around her, a dizzying spiral of past, present and future. She was no longer observing. She was traveling. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was like being stretched impossibly thin, then compressed into a single point, then flung outwards into infinite directions all at once. Colors she'd never seen before flashed past, sounds that weren't meant for human ears echoed in her mind. It was terrifying and breathtaking, a cosmic roller coaster that defied all sense. Just as she thought she might dissolve into the temporal fabric itself, the sensation abruptly ceased. She landed with a soft hind thump on something cool and spongy. Her head spun. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to regain her bearings, to remember where she was, who she was. When she finally dared to open them, she found herself in a place utterly alien, yet strangely familiar. She was no longer in her father's workshop. She was no longer even on a viewing platform. She was in a vast open space, bathed in a soft, luminescent glow that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. Above her, a sky shimmered with patterns of light that shifted and danced like liquid aurora. Below, The ground was a patchwork of iridescent fungi and glowing flora, soft and yielding beneath her. The air was warm and smelled of damp earth and something sweet, like nectar. Giant bioluminescent trees, their branches adorned with delicate bell-shaped flowers, spiraled upwards, their canopy forming a living cathedral. Strange gentle chittering sounds echoed from the shadows, accompanied by the rustle of unseen creatures. And in the distance, partially obscured by the glowing foliage, she could see a faint familiar silhouette. The crystalline spires of Ethelberg. But they weren't gleaming white and pristine as in her projections. Here, they were ancient, weathered, and covered in a fine layer of luminescent moss. Some were partially overgrown by the giant trees, integrated into the living landscape. This was Ethelberg, but an Ethelberg of a distant future, or perhaps a forgotten past. An Ethelberg returned to nature, reclaimed by the vibrant life of Xylos. Elara stood up slowly, her small legs wobbly. She looked down at herself. She was still wearing her sleep tunic, but it felt different somehow, lighter. She touched her face, then her hair. Everything felt the same. She wasn't a ghost, she was really here. She had traveled through time. She, Elara, the little chrononaut, had physically jumped. A small silvery creature, like a miniature, six-legged fox, scurried past her feet, its fur glowing faintly. It paused, tilted its head, and blinked large dark eyes at her before darting into the undergrowth. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now overshadowed by a profound sense of wonder. She had done it. She had stepped out of her own time, into another. She started to walk, drawn by an irresistible pull towards the ancient spires. The ground was soft, silent. The air hummed with a different kind of energy here, a quiet, ancient power. With every step, a tiny burst of bioluminescence erupted from the fungi beneath her feet, lighting her path. As she drew closer to the city, she saw that the once smooth crystal surfaces were now etched with swirling patterns of light, like intricate tapestries woven by the elements. Windows once transparent, now pulsed with a soft internal glow, as if the buildings themselves were alive, breathing. She found herself standing before what looked like a main entrance, a colossal archway, overgrown with glowing vines. The grand doors, once gleaming metal, were now weathered and adorned with intricate carvings of a celestial map. The stone beneath her feet was cracked, but still radiated a faint, comforting warmth. And there, etched into the archway, almost hidden by the encroaching foliage, was a symbol. A single stylized eye, surrounded by a delicate spiral. It was the same symbol she'd seen subtly woven into the fabric of the cloaked figure's garment, a detail she'd noticed only in the most vivid of her Chrono Weaver projections. The symbol here felt ancient, powerful, a silent witness to countless ages. It spoke of deep secrets, of enduring purpose. Elara reached out, tracing the symbol with her finger. As her skin touched the cool, aged stone, a faint resonance vibrated through her, echoing the feeling of the Chrono Weaver itself. The spiral seemed to pulse, and the eye to glimmer with an inner light. She was in the heart of Ethelberg, a place of profound beauty and forgotten history. And she was one step closer to understanding the mystery of the cloaked figure, the silent architect of time. But what was this place? What era had she stumbled into? And how would she ever get back home? The warm, sweet air of this ancient future, or past, felt both welcoming and utterly overwhelming. Her small adventure had become something far, far bigger than she could have ever imagined. She was in the heart of Ethelberg, a place of profound beauty and forgotten history. And she was one step closer to understanding the mystery of the cloaked figure, the silent architect of time. But what was this place? What era had she stumbled into? And how would she ever get back home? The warm, sweet air of this ancient future, or past, felt both welcoming and utterly overwhelming. Her small adventure had become something far, far bigger than she could have ever imagined. The light that pulsed from Ethelberg's core wasn't a harsh, artificial glow, but something soft, alive, like the synchronized breathing of 1,000 fireflies. It emanated from crystalline structures that spiraled upwards, forming delicate, impossibly tall spires that pierced a sky the color of amethyst. Vines, thick as ancient trees, but luminous with their own soft internal glow, wrapped around these spires, their leaves unfurling like iridescent fans. Water, impossibly clear and sparkling with tiny motes of light, flowed in gentle rivers through the city, cascading over smooth, sculpted stones that hummed with a low, resonant frequency. She took a tentative step onto the path beneath her feet. It wasn't stone or soil, but a yielding, spongy surface that felt almost alive, warm beneath her bare toes. The air here was scented with something like jasmine and ozone, a fragrance both alien and comforting. She looked around, her eyes wide, trying to absorb every detail. There were no harsh angles, no sharp edges, only graceful curves and organic forms. Structures seemed to grow from the ground rather than being built upon it, merging seamlessly with the luminous flora. Then she noticed movement. Not the rustling of leaves or the flow of water, but something more deliberate. Figures. They moved with a slow, almost dreamlike grace, their forms vaguely humanoid but elongated, slender. Their skin shimmered with the same soft luminescence as the city itself, and their eyes, when they occasionally turned her way, were large and dark, reflecting the myriad lights of Athelberg like tiny galaxies. They wore garments that seemed woven from moonlight and mist, flowing around them as they glided along the luminous paths. Fear, a cold prickle, warred with her awe. She was an outsider, clearly. Would they be friendly? Or would she be seen as an intruder? She instinctively pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible on the path. One of the luminous figures, taller than the others, paused in its slow procession. It turned its head fully towards her. There was no discernible mouth, but she felt a gentle pressure, a question in her mind. "Little wanderer, why do you hide?" "Oin." The voice wasn't spoken aloud, but resonated directly within her thoughts, clear as a bell. It was calm, curious, and utterly without malice. Hesitantly she uncurled, pushing herself to her feet. I don't know where I am," she whispered, her voice sounding impossibly small in the vast humming silence of Athelberg. "I was just following a light, a cloak." The tall figure glided closer, its movements fluid and silent. It wasn't intimidating despite its height. In fact, it radiated a quiet serenity. Its large dark eyes seemed to peer not just at her, but into her, reading her fears and wonders. "You followed the architect. Few are chosen to pass the temporal veil without intention. Your spirit is Inselana." "The architect?" she asked, remembering the cloaked figure. "Is that who brought me here?" "Indeed. This is Ethelberg, the luminous archive, a sanctuary woven from the threads of time itself. And you, little one, are a visitor from a moment yet to be." The figure, extended a hand, its fingers long and delicate, glowing faintly. It wasn't an invitation to touch, but a gesture, pointing towards the heart of the city, where the light pulsed most brightly. "Our architect awaits you there. Only they can explain your presence and your path home." "When on." Taking a deep breath, she nodded. The fear hadn't entirely vanished, but curiosity, a stronger, more persistent force, urged her forward. "Thank you," she managed, and the figure gave what she interpreted as a gentle nod before resuming its silent journey. She walked, following the soft, luminous paths deeper into Athelberg. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if the ground itself was encouraging her. The air grew warmer, sweeter. She passed more of the luminous inhabitants, whom she now thought of as the Athel. They moved about their silent tasks, sometimes pausing to observe her with their deep, knowing eyes, but never interfering. She saw them tending to the luminous vines, their hands passing over the glowing leaves, causing them to pulse with brighter light. Others stood before shimmering walls that seemed to ripple with images, like windows into other times or places. Were they watching history unfold? Or shaping it? The structures here were truly breathtaking. Some resembled giant, hollowed-out geodes, their inner surfaces sparkling with countless tiny crystals. Others were like colossal, iridescent bubbles, through which she could glimpse vast, complex machinery humming with barely audible energy. It was a city of living light and ancient technology, a place where the organic and the mechanical had merged into something profoundly beautiful and utterly harmonious. Finally, she reached the very heart of the city. Here, the crystalline spires converged, forming a central chamber of colossal proportions. The inner light pulsed here with an intensity that made the air thrum, casting ever-shifting patterns of color across the flora and walls. And there, standing at the very center of this radiant space, was the cloaked figure. They were exactly as she remembered them, tall, wrapped in fabric the color of deep space, their face hidden by the cowl. But, here, in the heart of Athelberg, the figure radiated an aura of immense power and ancient wisdom, like a star held captive in human form. The air around them shimmered faintly. "You have come." The figure's voice was a low resonance, like the murmur of ancient stones, but it was also surprisingly gentle, carrying an echo of the mental voice she'd heard before. "I am the architect." She swallowed, suddenly feeling very small again. Why did you bring me here, architect? I don't understand any of this. I just want to go home." Her voice trembled slightly. The architect moved, not gliding like the Athel, but shifting with a subtle, almost imperceptible displacement of the air, turning fully towards her. "Your desire to return is understood, little one, but your journey here was not an accident. It was a necessity." "A necessity?" she echoed, baffled. "Athelberg is a chronal nexus, a point where the many strands of time converge. We observe, we record, and sometimes, we intervene. Your timeline is frayed. A great unraveling is beginning, a distortion that threatens to consume not just your world, but countless others." She frowned, struggling to grasp the enormity of what the architect was saying. "Frayed? Like a rope?" "Precisely. And the cause is not malicious, but born of a profound grief and a desperate hope. A being from a distant future, attempting to undo a terrible loss, has begun to ripple through the past, creating paradoxes that threaten to tear the very fabric of existence." "But what does that have to do with me?" she asked, feeling a prickle of alarm. The architect's cowl tilted slightly, as if they were looking at her more closely. "You possess a unique quality, one that is rare and precious. You perceive the echoes of time, the residual energies of past and future. It is why you are able to see my beacon, the light that called you here, and it is why you can navigate the temporal currents without being lost." "I just thought it was a pretty light," she mumbled, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "It was more than pretty light, child. It was a resonance. And now you are needed. You are the key to mending the frayed thread." "May? How could I possibly do something like that?" The idea was ludicrous. She was just a kid, who liked to read and draw and explore her own backyard. The being causing the unraveling is not an enemy but a sorrowful soul. Their actions, though catastrophic, stem from a pure, albeit misguided, desire to reclaim what was lost. Force would only deepen the wound. What is needed is understanding, empathy, and a truth they have forgotten. The architect then performed a gesture that made her gasp. They lifted their hands, and the deep space fabric of their cloak seemed to part, not to reveal a face, but to open into a swirling vortex of stars and nebulae. It was as if she was staring into the heart of the universe itself, contained within their form. "My true form is not of flesh and blood, but of chronal energy, woven into this shell to interact with your reality. I am an observer, a guardian, but I cannot directly interfere with the emotional core of this temporal disruption. Only a being with a heart as open as yours can reach them. Only a being with a heart as open as yours can reach them." A shimmering image coalesced in the starlit void within the architect's cowl. It was a landscape of stark, beautiful desolation. Twisted, skeletal trees reached towards a perpetually twilight sky. In the center, a magnificent, intricate city, much like Athelberg but built from gleaming metal rather than living light, lay in ruins, shattered and silent. And standing amidst the rubble, bathed in a melancholic light, was a figure. They were tall, regal, adorned in flowing robes, but their posture was one of profound despair, their head bowed. "This is the future being, the chrononaut, Xylos, the architect explained, their voice now infused with a touch of sadness. Their world, their beloved Ethel, perished in a cataclysm. Silos blames themselves, believing they could have prevented it. They have been trying to reverse that moment, to save their people, but each attempt only weakens the timeline further, creating echoes and paradoxes that ripple outwards. They lost everyone, she asked, a pang of sympathy in her chest. She couldn't imagine losing her family, her home. Yes, and in their grief, they have forgotten a fundamental truth. That some endings, however painful, are also beginnings. That even in loss there is a seed of new possibility. You, child, must remind them. How? What can I do? You must journey to the precise moment of their despair, before their next, most destructive attempt to alter the past. The architect extended a hand towards her, not the glowing hand of the Ethel, but one that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. I will open a gateway for you. It will lead you to Xylos' temporal chamber, a place outside the normal flow of time, where they craft their interventions. Be brave, little one. The fate of many realities rests on your words. She felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach, but also a surge of determination. Xylos wasn't evil, just sad. She understood sad. What do I say? She asked, looking up at the architect. Speak from your heart, speak of hope, speak of what you have seen here, in Ethelberg, a sanctuary built not on avoidance of loss, but on the preservation of memory and the fostering of new life from old foundations. With a deep breath, she nodded. Okay, I'll try. The architect's starlit hand glowed brighter, and a shimmering portal, like a window into a swirling galaxy, opened before them in the heart of Ethelberg. The air hummed with power, and the scent of ozone grew stronger. Go now, little wanderer, the architect urged, their voice soft but firm. And remember, the light. She stepped through the portal without hesitation. The feeling was like falling through liquid starlight, a fleeting sensation of being stretched thin across time and space, then reforming. She landed softly on a cool metallic floor. The chamber was vast, circular, and filled with an intricate array of holographic projections and shimmering temporal conduits. Giant screens displayed complex equations and swirling images of different eras. At the very center, hunched over a console glowing with a furious blue energy. They were even more regal than in the architect's vision, adorned in robes of deep indigo and silver, but their face, when she finally saw it, was etched with an unbearable sorrow. Their eyes, the same deep, knowing eyes as the Ethel, were red-rimmed and distant. They were muttering to themselves, pressing buttons, manipulating energy fields. The air crackled with unstable chronal energy. Xylos, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. Xylos froze. Their heads snapped up, those sorrowful eyes widening in shock as they spotted her. Who are you? How did you get in here? This chamber is shielded from all temporal intrusion. Their voice was deep, resonant, and filled with a raw edge of desperation. The architect sent me, she said, stepping forward. I'm from another time, a very different one. Xylos pushed away from the console, their movements jerky. The architect, my ancient tormentor? A flicker of anger, hot and sharp, crossed their features, replacing the despair. No, not to mock, she insisted, remembering the architect's words. To help, to remind you. Xylos laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Remind me? Of what? Of the dust and ashes that were once my people, of the silence where their laughter used to be. I remember everything, child, and I will change it. I will bring them back. They gestured to the console, its blue energy pulsing more intensely. One more calculation, one more shift. This time I will succeed. I will prevent the great silence. But you're hurting things, she said, her voice gentle but firm. The architect said you're fraying the timeline, that you're making things worse even for other worlds. Xylos recoiled, as if struck. Worse? What could be worse than utter annihilation? What could be worse than knowing I failed them? Their eyes searched hers, desperate for understanding. Ethelberg isn't gone, she said, surprising even herself with the words. It's changed. It's living. I saw it. It's beautiful, full of light, and... Silos stared at her, their brow furrowed in confusion. Ethelborg is a ruin. My people, the Ethel, perished in the Chrono storm. There is nothing left but memory and dust. No? She shook her head, walking closer. The energy around the console was making her hair stand on end, but she didn't care. It's not dust. It's a sanctuary. The architect called it the luminous archive. It's woven from the threads of time, and it glows, it's alive, and the Ethel are there. They're luminous beings made of light, and they tend to glowing vines, and watch other times on shimmering walls. A flicker of something, not anger, not despair, but pure bewilderment, crossed Izailos' face. Luminous beings, they were flesh and blood like me, scholars, artists, dreamers, not ethereal light forms. Maybe they changed, she suggested, remembering the architect's hint about new beginnings. Maybe when the storm came they didn't vanish, they transformed, they became something else. Something wonderful that lives on in Ethelberg. A different kind of life, a different kind of memory. The architect said that even in loss, there is a seed of new possibility. She paused, then added, they weren't sad, they were peaceful, they were tending to the city, making it grow. They seemed to be guardians, or keepers of time. Silos was silent for a long moment, their gaze distant, as if sifting through impossible memories. The blue light from the console, which had been growing more intense, began to dim slightly. The crackling in the air subsided. A different kind of life, Silos murmured, their voice softer now, tinged with a fragile hope. But they are not in my Ethel, not the ones I knew, the ones I failed. But they are why the Ethel, she countered gently. They are the continuation, they are the memory, living on. She remembered the feeling of the soft yielding path, the sweet air, the calm knowing eyes of the luminous Ethel. It's not gone, Silos, it's transformed. And if you keep trying to undo it, you might destroy this beautiful future too, the one that came from your past. Silos slowly walked towards her, their steps heavy. They knelt down, their regal robes pooling around them, until their eyes were level with hers. The raw pain was still there, but it was softened, diluted by a fragile thread of wonder. You truly saw them. My people, living as beings of light, tending to a luminous city. She nodded earnestly. Yes, and the city hums with their light. It's a place of profound beauty and forgotten history, and it's full of peace. They are not suffering, Silos. They are different way, in a different way. Silos reached out a trembling hand, not to touch her, but to hover near her, as if testing the reality of her words. A single shimmering tear traced a path down their cheek. I only saw the ruin, the end. I could not see the new beginning, born from the very energies that consumed them. My grief blinded me. The blue light on the console faded completely. The hum of the temporal machinery quieted. The chamber, which had been vibrating with raw energy, now felt still, calm. The architect wanted you to remember that, she said, her voice very soft. That some things don't end, they just change, and that memory and love can live on, even when everything seems lost. Silos closed their eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. When they opened them again, the deep sorrow was still present, but it was no longer consuming. It was tempered by a newfound understanding, a peaceful acceptance. You are right, little wanderer, Silos said, their voice regaining some of its old authority, but now infused with gratitude. My despair obscured the truth. I was so focused on reversing the end, I failed to see the continuation. The architect, always wise, always subtle. They knew only a pure heart, unburdened by my own grief, could show me the way. They stood up slowly, their gaze sweeping over the now silent temporal console. I will cease these temporal interventions. I will allow the threads to heal, and I will seek out this luminous archive not to undo the past, but to witness the future my people became. The air around them shimmered, and a familiar presence made itself known. The architect, still shrouded in their star-filled cloak, appeared silently in the chamber. The balance is restored. The architect's voice resonated, a deep chord of satisfaction. Your wisdom, little one, has saved countless timelines. You have shown Xylos the resilience of life, the enduring power of memory, and the quiet dignity of transformation. Silos bowed deeply to the architect. "My thanks, old friend, and my apologies for the chaos I wrought. I was lost in my grief. This child, she brought me back." The architect turned to her, and for the first time she felt a warmth, like sunlight, emanating from their hidden form. "Your journey is complete, brave heart. It is time for you to return home." A new portal opened, not the swirling galaxy of before, but a soft, shimmering doorway that pulsed with the gentle, familiar light of Athelberg. Through it, she could just glimpse the luminous spires and the flowing rivers of light. Will Athelberg always be there?" she asked, looking back at Silos, who now seemed filled with a quiet determination. Silos smiled, a genuine, if still melancholic smile. "Yes, little wanderer, it will always be there, a testament to enduring hope, and I will find it. I will learn from my transformed ancestors." "You did well, little wanderer." The architect's voice was a soft whisper in her mind. "Carry the wonder of this place with you. It will remind you that even when things change, beauty and light can always be found, if you know where to look." She stepped through the portal. The sensation was swift this time, like a gentle breath. One moment she was in the temporal chamber, the next, she was back in her own bed. The room was dark, familiar. The moonlight streamed through her window, casting soft shadows. The air was cool and sweet, smelling of night-blooming jasmine from her garden, not the ozone and alien perfumes of Athelberg. She sat up, heart still thrumming with the echoes of her impossible journey. Had it been a dream? She looked down at her hands. They were just her hands, small and ordinary. But then she noticed a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer on her skin, like tiny, barely visible motes of starlight. And deep within her, a quiet, steady hum, like the resonant frequency of Athelberg itself. It hadn't been a dream. She lay back down, pulling her covers up to her chin. The world felt different now, richer, infused with a secret knowledge. She knew that some things never truly ended, they just transformed. She knew that even in sadness, there was a quiet, luminous hope. And she knew that somewhere, across the vast, unfolding tapestry of time, a lost chrononaut had found peace, and a city of light continued to glow. As she drifted off to sleep, a soft inner light seemed to pulse gently within her, a silent reminder of her journey, and the boundless wonders that lay just beyond the veil of everyday life. She closed her eyes, a small smile playing on her lips, knowing that her small adventure had indeed become something far, far bigger than she could have ever imagined, and that she carried a piece of Athelberg forever in her heart.